young people really like to invite their friends into their home. It's sort of cosplaying like being a grown-up, but I really think there's more to it than that. But I do think we're going to see a notable shift in terms of how much they want to spend time entertaining at home. They're homebodies at heart.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rodbard. Casey Lewis is an expert of Gen Z and writes the colorful Substack After School that covers the culture and trends of youth today. I wanted to have Casey in the show to not just talk about how the kids are eating and drinking and shopping today, but to dig into her reporting on the rapidly shifting culture of our times. It's a fascinating talk about CPG, restaurant trends, and how social media is changing the way we all eat and drink. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Casey Lewis, welcome to This is Taste. Love having you in the studio. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. And After School is on Substack, and I'm linking to the show notes. From the jump, please, what is After School? I'd love to hear.
After School is a daily-ish email about youth trends broadly. And so that could be what the kids are doing on TikTok. That could be what they think about politics. It's really pretty wide-ranging.
Yeah, it's just such a read. And when I say older generations respond to it, it's kind of like I, as an older generation, as like an aging millennial, geriatric, I learn about younger gen.
Yes, that's the idea. And it's a lot of marketing people, but it's also a lot of like investors, founders, but also parents, teachers. Like everyone wants to know what younger generations are doing. And there's a lot out there and they're doing a lot. And so,
we're going to get into how Gen Z, Gen Alpha, we'll make it into boomers too, about how these cohorts consume food, other things too, but like also cook at home. And we'll get into a great conversation because I can't wait to like tap your brain. But Casey, what got you so interested in reporting on youth culture?
It's a great question. When I was in college, I started interning for YPulse, which was a youth trends agency pre-TikTok and all of these social media platforms. But I realized that what I was interested in, which was teen trends, I was a teen at the time, but I realized this was like marketable information that people wanted. And so I grew up reading teen magazines and tracking trends for myself, but then realized like, oh, this is currency when it comes to brands trying to reach young people. So really throughout my career, I've been focused on youth trends, sometimes speaking to youth at Teen Vogue and MTV, and then sometimes speaking to brands, agencies, founders, which is what I'm doing now.
It's really interesting when you talk about, you're alluding to like the monetization of like this intel about what the kids are doing. And I swear that will be the last time I say that. But it's such a powerful set of data points or anecdotes. And I want to ask you, like, why are we always looking back either positively, which I think I tried to do and I know you do, but also negatively, like, what the fuck? That is the worst song. That is the worst movie. That is the worst social platform that you often fall into that. But tell me about that.
I think with young people, they're trying to figure out who they are, what they want to tell the world about themselves. So they are listening to more music than anybody else. They're watching old movies and new movies. They're spending so much time trying to figure out their aesthetic because they do not know themselves. Whereas not that we know ourselves that much better, but when we reach adulthood, we're not as experimental in who we are as people. And I think that youth trends are such a thing because they are trying so much more and they are downloading apps and they're searching on TikTok. And I think I do want to say I'm not just interested in youth trends to monetize. I'm fascinated by these changes, like what they say about our world. And when I think about the youth trends when I was a teen versus youth trends now, the platforms have changed, but a lot of the stuff is the same, or the way that they're experimenting. There are many of the same ways we experimented, where it's like my dad thought my music was ridiculous too, just as some of the music that was on the VMAs last night I thought was ridiculous. But it's just one of those cyclical generational things.
Yeah, and definitely, to be clear, I think of you as a consultant, someone who is paid by people to say smart things, but more so you're a cultural anthropologist, a journalist. You have a great journalism background at Teen Vogue and MTV. And I think of you as both, which I think is like really, really tough to do. But I also want to get into, Gen Z and Alpha. They're an interesting cohort to study because they have time and money, which I think when you start to have families or even just get busier with your careers, we don't have that as much. So it's almost like a petri dish to where things are going because, as you said, you can try on a lot of hats while you're in that age cohort.
Yeah, and I think it's not just time and money. They also have access to so much culture. So when I was growing up from rural Missouri, my access to culture came through teen magazines and MTV. Like that was it. They have everything on their phone. They are exposed to so much more, which opens up their world and the sort of topics and things that they can explore and experiment with is sort of like sky's the limit.
Very cool. So let's pivot and talk about food.
Yeah.
And how using this kind of backdrop of like Gen Z and Alpha, we can learn a lot from them. They're trying on things. And I think, of course, at Taste, I love of kind of thinking about the way the youngins are using apps to learn about food. Why TikTok is a great source of discovery. I want to ask you first about New York City, the city we both live in. I mean, where are the Gen Z and Gen Alpha? More Gen Z. Where are they dining out? Where's everyone eating out right now?
Everyone is going to Apollo Bagel.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Wow. Totally.
No item has been more on my feeds, both TikTok and Instagram, than Apollo, which it makes me so happy because I love Apollo Bagel.
Yeah.
Like, I know that some people are like, oh, they're not like the classic New York bagel. I also will tell you I'm Leo Pizza's biggest fan, and in fact had my wedding there.
Oh, cool.
And so my loyalty for that crew runs deep, but to see how much they have tapped into this sort of TikTok, Instagram craze, it's bagels, it's beautiful bagels. I think that sort of model is TikTok Gen Z catnip, where it's like the price is right. It's a snack. You can kind of get it on the go. It's in both locations are in very young neighborhoods, West Village and East Village, and you can make a day out of it. I think one thing that's interesting about Apollo Bagel and other places that Gen Z are drawn to is they love waiting in lines.
Yeah.
And
which is wild.
It makes better content.
Well said, Casey. I'm glad you said that. It's like if you want content, do that long pan of the long line you're waiting in versus being a little older and just like, snarking on it.
Yes. Another place, kind of the opposite of bagels, is there's an Erewhon dupe in the East Village, I believe. And it is a blue smoothie that everyone on my TikTok feed is obsessed with. I think it's cheaper than Erewhon smoothie. It's also it's like a mom and pop bodega, but it's just suddenly infiltrated my FYP.
I mean, viral foods are not new. And of course, the cronut is a great example. That was almost more than a decade ago.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, with TikTok in particular, it's like gasoline is being thrown on the fire for the virality of these foods. And I mean, is this a net positive, negative? Do you like to make a cast a judgment on what this means?
When TikTok first started taking hold, I was very down on it. And I thought, great, now we're going to have all these influencers just rolling into restaurants, posting up their rigs, talking throughout dinner. And that really, it happens every once in a while, but I think it's net positive. It is really helping these small businesses get their products out there. I think it's not even honestly small businesses. Chili's is also just suddenly on my FYP, but it's these places that you kind of do want to champion. And I think that social media is super powerful, obviously, in that way of championing these businesses that may not otherwise have that shine.
I love that you say that. Thank you for addressing the net positive, and I think net negative is probably just like online addiction, and maybe we shouldn't be caring so much about it.
Yeah.
But honestly, the net positive is like small business owners are getting the boost when they need it the most, which is like most days.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder how much of it is dining just for clout. But
Yeah.
if you're going to Apollo and you're getting the bagel and you're not eating the bagel, like, is anybody doing that though? Like, I can't imagine
Yeah.
eating that bagel. Presumably some people are just doing it to post, but I think the enjoyment is there for so many of these people.
I mean, there's a great scene on Triangle of Sadness. I don't know if you caught that movie that is kind of like about like ordering like literally a full restaurant or a platter of food and just doing the gram and like walking away. So I feel like it does happen. I took away from that film that there's a little reality there, which I think is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But
one other place that I do need to shout out just in terms of the sheer lines and the amount that they've infiltrated my FYP on TikTok and also on Instagram, Cafe Pana, which they just opened in Greenpoint, and I happen to walk my dog by there very often. So I'm super interested to see like who's waiting in line, what are they ordering, are they doing this for the gram, are they doing this for the TikTok? But that's another small business. It's like you can roll your eyes at lines, but the fact that a young woman-owned business is thriving, it's like, I'd love to see that.
Big champion of Cafe Pana. I love what they're doing. Let's transition to cookbooks. So we publish the world of cookbooks from boomers and older to alpha and maybe Gen Z, obviously publishing a lot here. Our job is to predict the future as book publishers. We work 2 to 3 years into the future when we acquire. And I just want to get a sense about how you think about home cooking, which to us is a bit of our North Star with cookbooks. From your reporting and research, can you think of any trends or just general sense of where home cooking is going?
At the end of the year, every year, there is a TikTok trend where you're sharing your ins and outs. And this past year, I watched, I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands of in and out lists posted by Gen Zers and kind of tallied up any emerging themes. And dinner parties were a major one. And I think that this is for several reasons. Obviously, budget. It's cheaper to invite you. But there's something larger here where young people really like to invite their friends into their home. It's sort of cosplaying like being a grown-up, but I really think there's more to it than that. I could talk to you about the sort of macro trends happening with young people, obviously not buying real estate, staying with their parents longer, just the way that they're thinking about living and where they're living and how they're living. It's really different. And it's hard to make too many generalizations about Gen Z right now because the youngest are 14, the oldest are 27. So we're talking about a very wide swath of people. So obviously the 14-year-olds probably aren't having dinner parties or really probably cooking too much. I mean, maybe some dabbling with some TikTok recipes. But I do think we're going to see a notable shift in terms of how much they want to spend time entertaining at home. And yeah, they're homebodies at heart.
No, absolutely. I think one thing I would like to say and get your feedback is that obviously, when you're living a lot of your reality online and you're extremely online, the external world may mean less to the younger generation. And so while you're putting in those hours on TikTok and other apps, you kind of, I would say, almost inherently want to have a break from it. And for me, food feels like a really natural break because literally you have to do it.
Yeah.
You don't have to watch sports for a break. You don't have to go for that walk. You don't have to like leave the house, but you gotta eat. And like, it's my read, and I fully agree with you that we're seeing a lot of great home cooking like impulses from Gen Z, but it seems like that's like a way for you to like break from the phone.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Although I do think a lot of people have the phone propped up with a recipe. There's just so much food content. I think during the pandemic that TikTok was such a unlock for young people in terms of cooking. I mean, food talk, if you will, just blew up then. And people were forced to spend time at home and they were going into the kitchen because they couldn't go to restaurants. And so I think that young people, that Gen Z will be better cooks than
Oh, yeah.
than probably many millennials, just because of by force of nature.
I love that optimism, and I fully agree. There's also just like a little bit of like maybe coveting handcrafted things. I think like Z definitely tends to have a more of a kinship with making things.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you follow Nara Smith.
No, who's that? Tell me.
She's a famous Gen Z. Is what they would call a trad wife. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the trad wife trend. And so she makes everything from scratch. Like we're talking cereal, cinnamon rolls, like multi-step projects. And she has like 5 kids and looks like she just stepped off the runway.
Oh, of course.
But, I think a lot of Gen Zers watch what she's doing, and obviously they're not living that same life, but there is an aspirational, there's something aspirational about it, but there's also something like I could step in my kitchen and make life cereal from scratch if I wanted to.
The key is to hit both.
Yes.
The Venn diagram overlap is like having aspiration, but also like real utility. So we are publishing a lot of, I would say, influencer books. I say that broadly, and Eliza and I have been having fall previews, and we've been very careful because I would never want to put any author into like you're only an influencer, but you're not. Like there's none of that happening. But Casey, I want to get a sense from your point of view. Who are you interested in the food world who are maybe doing interesting work or just like who are making a big splash on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube?
I feel like such a millennial saying this, but I think Alison Roman's influence is really hard to overstate in terms of millennials and Gen Zers. Like she has her recipes, the way that her online presence, the way that she has a newsletter and the YouTube and the podcast. Like her playbook is really fascinating, and her recipes resonate. There's a reason that she is as popular as she is. And so I think a lot of young people look at her as sort of someone they could emulate and, aspire to be. So I love all of these food substackers. Abigail Koffler, This Needs Hot Sauce.
Yes.
It's one of my favorites. It's so simple. She highlights some recipes she's cooked. She highlights some restaurants she's been to. She highlights recent reads. Yeah. And it's such a digestible, lovely snapshot of someone's life. I love it. And I want to see more of that kind of writing where so much beautiful writing happens through food, as you know.
Yeah.
And so I really like what's happening on Substack in terms of this like food sort of, it's not even recipe development. It's just like people sharing what kind of food they like.
Agree fully. Thank you for calling out Abigail. I think she's a terrific example. And back to Allison, I think you're so right. I'd say one thing you said, playbook. I don't think Allison has one.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to like litigate a word you use, but I mean, what I like about Allison, she's been on the show a couple times, and a friend, I feel like she just like lives her real life and like, and shoots from the hip.
Yeah.
And I love that about Allison's content, and she's really terrific. She's a great author.
Yeah, I shouldn't say playbook in terms of like, I don't think she has a marketing playbook. Yeah. I think she is building her own sort of way here, but I think that it is a playbook that someone else could look at and replicate, aspire to replicate, because the way that she is able to go cross-platform and be so authentic on all of those, her writing, you read it and you're like, this is Alison Roman. It's really great.
We've talked about Substack here a bit, but what about TikTok? TikTok and food is really one of the fastest growing categories on the platform. Are there folks on TikTok that are interested in food?
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you, my research on TikTok is all to understand what trends are happening, so when someone asks me who my favorite influencers are, I have a really hard time because I to be honest, like I'm not following influencers because I necessarily like them. I'm following them more to understand about what is happening here. There's one really cool girl whose name I can't tell you, which I think is a symptom of TikTok, where people come up on your FYP, you see them, you like them. You may know their faces, but you likely don't know their usernames or names. And that, I think, is why TikTok is a tough creator platform, because it's really hard to build a following and a name for yourself. An example is I saw a TikToker outside of my apartment. And I said to my husband, oh my gosh, I follow her on TikTok. And he said, what's her name? And It's like, how
Whoa.
can I pretend to be a fan of someone if I don't even know their name? But that's just the nature of the platform.
Yeah.
But so there's one girl that I think is great. She's trying to go to all of 100 of the Pete Wells. Pete Wells
Yeah,
has the
top
100
restaurants
yes,
in New York.
and she's going to all of them. And she's like, I don't know, she might be like 24 years old, and she has a very like distinct like TikTok-y style where she takes the big bite, it's
Gotta love the big bite.
you gotta love the big bite,
Yeah.
but she has such a cool way about her. There's no snark, which I love, because so often with food content, especially, it's overly snarky. And a hit piece or a hit TikTok, on a restaurant, it's not that good. It does numbers. That's why people, make this kind of content. But I don't need like snark with my food unless it's really well done.
I agree fully, and I really do champion those who have more of an earnest approach, and really do it for the love of food. And like when you're in the back seat of your car, like rambling on about why this pizza is like mid or whatever the word you're going to use, it's like not great. And from the food rating point of view, it's just not great. I'm going to keep saying that. And I think there's a real opportunity, like these survey-style creators who are going and kind of piggybacking on the journalism world. So I love like visiting all of Pete's restaurants.
Yes.
It could be like cooking through the Jerusalem cookbook. Like to me, that's like the perfect blend of like editorial and then like more experiential coming together.
Yes.
I want to talk about snack as a status symbol. It's something we've talked about a lot on our show. We've had a lot of CPG founders. We've had Andrea Hernandez on twice, and she runs the terrific Snack Shot. And, snacks have always been part of our culture. Your great Substack is called After School, and we all know we have snacks from after school. But I'd like to get Casey a sense of how, with your reporting, have you seen products, food products, CPG, like products that we know about, how have they become status for a younger generation?
One thing to note is that the studies show that young people are spending more on food than ever before. And so they're spending quite a bit on beauty. They're spending slightly less on tech. They're spending slightly less on clothes. They're spending more on food. And that could be just going to Taco Bell with their friends, but that is more likely seeking out really interesting snacks that they can then put on their Instagram story, make a taste test TikTok. There's so much opportunity to make content around these snacks, and so many snacks today have amazing labels, and the whole experience of them is fun. It's experiential, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's more of, it's not just I would come home from school, I'd be starving, I make a peanut butter and jelly. There's nothing aesthetically pleasing about that. Was it a good experience for me? Sure, I like a peanut butter and jelly, but now it's like you want it to be a bonding moment with your friends, or you want it to be some sort of social moment, and it's just, there's so much more opportunity to make it more than just a snack.
I think about like the probiotic sodas in a little bit of that sense. It's like I'm going to taste my way through all the Olipops, and I have a whole fridge full of all these crazy flavors. Is there a brand that comes to mind that's been really activating in a cool way and has found its way onto social in a cool way?
Just in the last couple of days, Poppi did a huge, speaking of the probiotic, prebiotic sodas.
The wars, the real wars.
The real wars. But they did a huge pop-up in Soho tied to Fashion Week. Yeah. And there were 2-hour lines that people were waiting in. And the reason, how they got people there, people will wait for lines for these pop-ups. You want to be able to show that you're there. They're limited runs, so you really want to have that clout. But the really smart thing that Poppi did was they had the actual soda machine, and I believe it was the first time ever that their flavors had the actual spout, gas station style spout. And so I saw a TikTok that was like, I'm the first person in history to make the Poppi suicide.
Oh yeah.
And someone actually responded and was like, no, my friend got there earlier. And, people just want to be there and experience it. And whether you really like Poppi or not, they have that sort of cool they've managed to get that cool factor, which we could talk about why they have the cool factor, which is the branding is great. Yep. They're colorful. They're cute. They have fun flavors. They are probiotic, and let's not, that is a significant factor for young people who care about supplements. They care about this sort of health halo. And so Poppi and Olipop have both kind of like hit on the head of like the perfect trifecta of, must-haves for young people.
I feel like there's going to only be one winner in that war, and we will see which one it is.
Who do you think it'll be?
Well, thank you for asking. I personally, as a product, I'm more Olipop by far. I think the formulation in Olipop is so much better and stronger. It's a real push when it comes to like visibility in the marketplace, because I think clearly Poppi has more money and is really doing big things, and it seems that Ollie has cooled a great deal in terms of the buzzy events. I used to see a lot of influencers in food cracking those Ollies, and I haven't seen a new flavor launch, though I do know that there is a Mountain Dew Olipop that's launching, and I did see that, so I guess I saw one influencer. I like them both being here, but I don't think they're all gonna make it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think Olipop is the better product. I think Poppi has more money. The fact that they teamed up with Alex Earl for Coachella, that wins over all of the Gen Zers,
Is there another product or brand in food that comes to mind that has been winning the game?
I mean, I think we got to talk about Fishwife, which like tin fish still, but still.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that Gen Zers love tin fish, I mean, it's crazy and so interesting, I think. And the fact that it's started by young-ish women, their packaging is great. The product itself is good, although, who's to say that tin fish? I don't know the tin fish market that well.
It's a challenging thing to judge because a lot of it is very high quality when you start buying a little bit better than the one you're going to get that your grandpa has.
Yes.
Great call there.
Also, fancy potato chips I'm seeing a lot of. I'm not a potato chip person, so I don't really pay that much attention to. But I know, potato chips with like fun dips, caviar, of course. I think the it snack from the U.S. Open among young people, these $100 chicken nuggets that were topped with caviar.
Yeah, I just had Ben Leventhal on the show, and we talked about that's from Cocodoke, and that's Simon Kim's restaurant in Gramercy. And per Ben's assessment, he won the U.S. Open because those Cocodoke boxes were in every VIP moment. And Casey, the fact that you spotted it really is a cosign for Ben's observation. Well done, Simon Kim. Nice job.
I mean, think about it, though. The fact that young people were seeking out $100 chicken nuggets, like that speaks, I think, to status of, really any snack, but it speaks to it's once in a lifetime, probably not, but at the US Open, you want to get your hands on the hard to get, there's clout in having the expensive snack. You post that on social media and you're already spending an arm and a leg on tickets. Like, what's another $100?
What's another $100?
Put it on Afterpay.
Put it on Afterpay. We can get that is a second conversation about Afterpay and about the actual financial repercussions of this type of consumption. I think status snacks are here to stay. And again, I'm going to stress Andrea Hernandez Snack Shot on Substack. You should be definitely reading it along with After School.
Follow her on Twitter too. She's so great on Twitter. Yes, she is spicy. Yes,
love Andrea.
The tea is hot from her.
Definitely. All right. It's interesting. We're into this conversation a bit, and we haven't talked about YouTube. And to me, I follow media a bit, and I read the semaphores of the world, and there's always something about YouTube and something about Gen Z being big. But I don't know, and I wonder if these streams are really coming from the younger generation, Gen Z alphas, or if it's like parents putting their the kids in front of YouTube who are too. What do you think about YouTube right now?
The research I've done on YouTube, I should say the research I've done on YouTube, but not physically on YouTube, because I spend no time on YouTube.
Yeah,
I spend a lot of time reading about YouTube.
Casey, you're not the same. I spent way more time reading.
It is such a giant, and in my research and also conversations with Gen Alphas and Gen Zs, they are spending so much time on YouTube. It is their TV, and what YouTube has that TikTok doesn't, they can really just put something on, put it on in the background, and let it run. TikTok, you just don't have that ability to embed yourself in an influencer or a TV show or, whatever. But I think, cord cutting is not even a topic anymore. There's no cords.
Yeah.
And
the cords have been retired. They're in the earth. Yeah.
And YouTube, young people grew up watching YouTube, and so they already have that very strong relationship. Earlier this year, I went to VidCon in Anaheim, and I felt like I was looking into a world, that world being YouTube, that I had spent no time on or in. And yeah, I mean, all of these years later, when I was at Teen Vogue, now almost 15 years ago, YouTube creators were just starting to really, take on the conversation around them was very, very loud at that time. And like Lily Singh came to the office, and she was massive at that time, massive. And they're still YouTube is still going.
It's still going.
It's like a quiet powerhouse.
It's still quiet, and I'm with you. I don't spend a lot of time on YouTube. I watch Doobie Doobop's episodes. I love Tina. She's terrific. For me, when it comes to food and YouTube, there's only one name that comes to mind. It's Joshua Weissman. Joshua Weissman, and you don't know who he is because I can read your face.
Yeah.
Which I think is like so interesting about this platform that is clearly so significant, but we're just missing it. Not you. I'm missing it. And media is missing it because, like, look at the numbers and look at the platform that everyone who's smart about this stuff says is growing with the young generation. And I look at Joshua's numbers. He drops vids usually on the weekend, and he's in top 20 trends for a food creator. I think that's remarkable to be in a top 20 trending list for food. And big shouts to Joshua Weissman for creating content that is compelling and creative in his team. Joshua is a terrific creator, but it's just so interesting that we still think about TikTok as being important for food, but in fact, you remember YouTube better.
Yeah.
So, Casey, I want to ask you a personal question more about you. I know you have an interest in wine and wine writing, and I think that's really cool that you are, taking the time and really have an appreciation for this. So first, just you personally, how do you think about wine and the future of wine, maybe as your own like connoisseurship changes, or just how you learn more because everyone's learning all the time about wine?
So I am interested in wine personally, but something I think about a lot is the future of any of these industries, right? Wine being one of them. But with Gen Z consumer habits changing and sort of seemingly always shifting, it makes me wonder what the sustainability or, the future of any given industry looks like. So wine, let's, consider Gen Z is drinking less than any other generation. They are constantly renegotiating their relationship with wine. They are taking breaks in ways that other generations wouldn't have. I've talked to so many young people who are just like off alcohol just casually, which now I think millennials have picked up on that as well. Yeah. But it's astounding to me that a 22-year-old living in New York, just graduated college, is taking a couple months off just for the hell of it, not for like dry January. And so I think often of what things were like when I moved to the city. I moved to the city in 2010, right out of college. I went to University of Missouri, was in a sorority. The drinking scene there was one thing. And then coming here where sort of your social life revolves around happy hour. But happy hour in 2010 was often craft beer bars.
Yeah.
Craft beer bars largely don't exist anymore. I mean, some do, but like the last...
It's a dead category.
Yeah, the last great one in Williamsburg just closed, the one that was attached to St. Anselm.
Oh, wow.
And it's like...
Sput in Dyeville?
Yes.
That closed?
It closed.
I remember going there in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, I would go... My friends and I would go there. We were young. We could hardly afford that beer because it was fancy beer. But we'd still want to go. It was a good scene. And now there's just no craft beer bars. There's some cocktail bars. But if you're going to go just have a casual night with your friends, you're probably going to go to a wine bar because in the last 5 to 10 years, there have been all of these interesting wine bars opening up. Sauced, I think, is a big one. 10 Bells.
Yeah,
and,
of course, the original.
Yeah, and it's like these places are so different than the wine bars when I was, young and in the city. When I first moved here, there were a couple of wine bars in Williamsburg, but they felt so stuffy. And so I'm just constantly thinking about how industries are shifting and wine in particular is shifting, and Stranger Wines is my local wine store. And every time I go in there, there's young people in there. Part of this is because I'm getting older. So the people that work there, they feel like young people to me in some cases, and they're not like 22, but these kids have so much input and so much thoughts to share on wine. And so, long story short, very interested in wine, both somewhat to drink it, but also just what it stands for from a as a macro trend.
Yeah, it's very cool that you bring up a couple topics here that I would like to discuss. I mean, one is the NA movement and how Gen Z is clearly shifting towards NA and thinking about NA products. We mentioned a few, but also just like sobriety in general as like a trend or as like a movement. And I agree. I've seen so many young folks who've taken months off. When I was growing up in New York, it would be only dry January or never, to be honest. And so I think the products around NA beers, we've written a lot on taste, but also like water. I think mineral water is going to be way more of a Gen Z thing once the mineral water companies do a better job at marketing, frankly.
Yeah. Although I do have something to add there. There's something really interesting among a lot of Gen Zers in that they don't like bubbles.
Interesting.
Or what we would call maybe
carbonation.
Fizz. Carbonation. Yeah. They're very resistant to it, many of them. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with, for instance, champagne, but also mineral water. Will LaCroix's reign end with millennials? I do not know.
Such an insight, and never have heard that, and I trust you because I like your work. To be clear about mineral water, just to not correct, but just to say La Croix is not mineral water. That is truly that's like seltzer with flavor. When I talk about mineral water, I'm talking about actually flat, mostly.
Flat.
But also like mineral, meaning from like a source. Like,
I see.
Like water from Poland.
Okay.
Water. Jordan Michelman's written great stuff about mineral water for taste and others. So mineral water that's from the Czech Republic, from Spain, and having water actually be appreciated and purchased, not maybe as a social status symbol, but also just as a culinary element.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that there's so many more things to explore beverage-wise when you're abstaining with alcohol now versus 10, 15 years ago. And so I think young people can go to restaurants and they can go to bars and they can still explore, have something that they've never had before, taste something interesting, have that experience with friends, but it doesn't have to be alcohol.
It's so interesting. I had in my notes, I was going to bring up Dime Square and the new Dime Square, which is Times Square. So I went to Time again last night. I walked by around 10:45, and like my time at like La Dive and some of these bars in that area, I've seen like, yes, people have been drinking and been social. So last night, interestingly, it was like 10:45, and Time and Again was like shut down. There were like cops around the perimeter of this like area, little triangle, but interestingly, it wasn't holding back. All Gen Z was there. It was like literally all Gen Z. It didn't hold anyone back from like still being there and hanging out. Many people did not have drinks in their hands. And it was clear that like the alcohol part of this group wasn't the focus. It was more about the community. It's like obviously one example, one small sample, but it was really striking to me.
Yeah. I mean, were they doing other things?
So that's like always the caveat, right? When you're talking about like sobriety and like NA movement, and like it's great. I'm glad you brought it up. Like, is like THC like bigger? Is cannabis bigger?
Yeah.
Is other stuff bigger? Hard to say. I don't know. Like, that's more for you to answer.
Yeah. Well, so in conversations working on various pieces around sort of what is the larger story here, some people told me that when they abstain from alcohol, they might pop an edible before dinner. And a couple of people mentioned like mushroom chocolates.
Yeah.
And I do think people are dabbling in these, you can get a slight buzz. They're not getting like fucked up, but you can get a slight buzz and have just as much fun as everyone else at the table. And also like your inhibitions are lowered a tiny bit just to be along the same lines as everyone else who may be imbibing, maybe drinking wine.
So Casey, we haven't mentioned millennials that much, and we haven't really mentioned alphas that much, and it's becoming nature is happening and millennials are having alphas. Talk about the way food kind of works between the millennial moms and dads and the children.
This is one of my favorite things to talk about. I in the past have studied Gen Zers the most just because they are the youths, but as Gen Alphas take hold, and Gen Alphas are born literally right now, up to like 13, 14. And many of their parents are elder millennials to young millennials. People have kids at all ages. And so observing how millennials who have very specific consumer behaviors are trickling down to their alpha kids and vice versa, because 11-year-olds can have a lot of influence on their parents' decisions. And I think, especially Gen Alphas who have so much screen time and are seeing so much, even on TikTok, where it's like I'm seeing Gen Alpha daughters recommend makeup to their millennial moms. Like, there's a lot of interesting stuff happening. It's still such a young age group that it's hard to really make any sweeping declarations about their consumer habits. But we can look at millennials and say, okay, millennials are obsessed with, organic, or they're obsessed with like very niche or almost like statusy items, whether it's like the best white crustless bread from Fresh Direct, or an organic avocado that they can get from the avocado guy on Instagram.
Yeah, that guy's name is Peter Romero, and I work with him.
Yeah,
He's got the best avocados.
But it's like the specificity, I think, that millennial parents, these are their preferences. And because millennials have so much access to these things, and you could dream up like, I want to have the best avocado in the world, and you could Google that, or the juice guy.
Yeah,
it's like these people who are like creating the best versions of whatever thing, and millennials treat themselves to it, but then they have alphas, and then they're like, well, I'm going to give my kid that too. Like,
so
my kid,
the energy is being transferred.
It's being transferred. And I think that there's also millennials are, I'm going to make a sweeping statement here, but they're doing pretty well as a generation financially. They've reached a point in their, figure the youngest millennial is 28, goes up to 43.
I mean, I think like 82 is probably the cutoff.
Yeah.
Whatever, I don't know, 81.
So, they're sort of in the prime of their career at this point, many of them. And so they're willing to spend more. And I think because of COVID, food became especially food at home, became such a source of happiness and fleeting moments of joy that people are willing to spend more on food than ever before. And also because delivery became such a thing that they can be very particular about the brands that they want. And then their kids are also growing up with these fancy ass palettes.
So cool. You connected some serious dots there, Casey. Amazing, amazing point there. This again, transition of energy from millennial parents to alpha children. Wow, lots to think about there. I want to close and ask you about Gen Z. Are you optimistic about this generation?
I'm so optimistic about this generation. I am an optimist at heart. I'm a tech optimist. I spent 3 years writing this newsletter and really deeply studying shifts and behaviors and what happens next. And there have been some dark times, especially politically over these last 3 years. But I am so optimistic about Gen Z as a cohort moving the future forward. They, are multifaceted, just as millennials are, but I feel good about it.
I love that. I love that optimism, and I want to have you back and ask you about more about the way that youth culture is really is leading trend in food and drink. It's so smart. Casey, on This Is Taste, we ask guests about their discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, fast and furious taste check. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. The best fruit.
Watermelon.
Amazing. So for you, what is the ultimate watermelon experience?
Well, it has taken me a while. So I grew up in the Midwest where I could just go to the grocery store, buy a massive watermelon, come home and cut it. Then moving to New York that first summer, I was like, shit, how do I get this massive watermelon? So it's been a bit of a learning curve living in New York and being able to have the amount of watermelon in the summer that I would like to. But my dream watermelon experience, well, I can just eat the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
I would just want to cut it like long ways and take a spoon and just knock it out.
The worst vegetable.
Onions. I'm not an onion girl.
Oh my gosh.
I know,
wow.
I know. It's divisive. Cooked are okay, but a raw white onion makes me want to cry.
I mean, it literally
it
will
would,
make
it will
you
literally
cry.
make me cry. But if you had to make me eat one, I would literally, I would, it would, yeah.
Listen, like raw onions can be a tough hang.
Yeah.
Can be a tough hang. And like there's the right time to use them, but there's also many wrong times. So I'm with you on that. I'm not going to like fully co-sign on that, but it's a pretty good answer. The best dessert.
I love ice cream. Specifically, not to bring it back to Leo, but Leo Pizzeria's homemade soft serve is my ideal dessert. They change the flavor seasonally, so it's very like fresh. It's homemade. There's a drizzle of olive oil, a sprinkle of sea salt. I love it, but I love soft serve generally.
The most Gen Z food.
The most Gen Z. Okay, chia seeds.
We haven't
talked about that, but tadpole water is this obsession of Gen Z girls on TikTok right now. Sort of problematic dietarily, because many of them are drinking this in hopes of losing weight. But hey, chia seeds are healthy and they are high in fiber. And if you want to slurp them down via tadpole water, then I guess so be it.
I love that. What about the most Gen X food?
Oh gosh. I have to say Gen X is a blind spot for me because
Well,
I'm a millennial.
Yeah.
What do you
I would
think?
say the cappuccino.
Oh, the cappuccino is a good one.
It's the most
the cappuccino and cigarettes.
Yeah,
as a meal.
Cappuccino is definitely from a third wave coffee shop or even Starbucks.
Wait, how about this? So Gen X, their meal is a cappuccino and a cigarette, whereas Gen Z is a matcha with a zin on the side.
Oh, we gotta get. I mean that right there is a full conversation. I feel like that's gonna be a debate one day that we should have. Your favorite indie retail shop for food?
I live by Big Night in Greenpoint, and it's just Catherine. She's such a talent. I love that place. I can go in there and get an awesome dip or just something to make my meal better. I just love it.
I love it. I shop often when I can. I love it. That place. Yeah.
I will say also Marlowe and Daughters. I don't know if you would consider them to be indie, but they're
for sure.
As a butcher shop, they are so good. I've never had something bad from there.
It's a great shop.
So great.
Exactly the answer. I love that. Your favorite cookbook of all time?
It's got to be Alison Robin.
Which one?
I feel like such a fangirl. Her first book is literally the only cookbook I own. I don't really cook, except I have cooked. She helped me. Via her cookbook helps me roast my first chicken.
Amazing.
It was a hit.
I love it.
Yeah.
Your favorite city outside America to visit for food?
Outside of America?
Yeah.
Copenhagen really is, I think, I just love like everything about it. I had one of the best burgers of my life there, but I haven't been there for a while. But yeah, I think Copenhagen is
It's
really
a great
good.
city.
Yeah.
It's super cool.
I did go to Greece last summer, and at first it was like so novel, because I love Greek food for the first couple of days. And then by like day 8, I was like, oh.
Yeah, you'd love some sushi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the feeling. But Greece is cool.
Greece is so cool.
But
yeah.
Last one, your favorite sandwich?
Oh my gosh, this is I'm so happy to plug this. So my favorite sandwich in the world is Court Street Grocers ham and cheese, which I think you cannot do wrong from Court Street Grocers. Yeah. But I feel so passionately about their ham and cheese, a sandwich that I had no feelings about prior to having the one from Court Street Grocer. I think the best is to take it to the beach and enjoy it there. It's even better after like the hour out to the Rockaways.
Needs that transit time.
But oh my gosh, I die for that sandwich. Their BLT is also very good, and I do sometimes switch it up. But if you've not tried their ham and cheese, please do it.
I love it. Casey Lewis, after school, definitely smash that subscribe. Such a great read. Thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm here with the BO boys. We're just going right in cold open. There is no need to intro these gentlemen, but I will anyways. You've got Pat Stengo across from me, longtime producer of This Is Taste. Clayton Gumbert is here to the left of me, longtime producer of This Is Taste.
Yeah, I feel like I'm more like producer emeritus as it comes to taste. I hang around. I poke my head in. I say, "Oh, everything's going good. All right, I'll leave now for a couple of weeks."
Yeah, you'll leave and do your own thing, which is like your job here, running video and audio at Penguin Random House.
You're the guy in the tie who comes into the job site and makes sure everything's all right.
Yeah.
Never seen Pat in a tie. I have to say that. Never seen you in a tie.
You know what? A little bow tie. I'll come in a little bow tie.
Bow tie would be great.
Yeah, I'll come in a little bow tie.
All right, Pat, tell me about the B.O. Boys. I'm a huge fan, but let our listeners know. We're linking to in the show notes. What is the B.O. Boys? What are the B.O. Boys? I'm using different.
I would say why the B.O. Boys, because box office matters. We are a box office podcast. Clayton and I, twice a week, we recap what happened at the movie box office. We look ahead to next weekend, because the thing about movies is liking movies is subjective, but money speaks. And so the only way to truly judge a movie is how much money did it make in the box office. That really is the only way to rank movies. And so that's what the B.O. Boys are here for.
And Pat, I think there's like a really unique situation with film and movies that you can't really compare with like television and music, is that when you have a budget that's very transparent, you have then a gross that you need to hit to make money. And then if you hit that number, you're successful. Like, we don't talk about budgets of TV shows that often, and
right.
Never talk about budgets for albums versus downloads, but it's like real math.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And people care, because no one has ever cared how much a song costs, but they do care about how much a Jurassic World sequel costs. For whatever reason they do. And so that's why they listen to the B.O. Boys, because it matters to them how much these movies cost, what they make. You know, it's Matt, when did you start following movie box office? I feel like we all have our time when we first realized that box office exists. Were you someone like us who would follow it in the newspaper every week when you're a little kid, see how much there's something about Mary Maid in its 8th weekend, 9th weekend?
I feel it's a great question. Thank you for turning it on the tables on me. I think for me, I was definitely more of a spin reader than an EW reader,
Okay.
and I think that speaks to many of our listeners. So music to me was like my like world that was like revolving around as a child. But to answer your question, I really think Titanic was the one that, for me, I understood that when you started having this movie around for 6 months in the theater, that was unique. And then you started actually talking about the Billies, right? That thing did obviously $2 billion at the box office. And for me, what about you guys? Clayton, when did you start covering?
It was Titanic for me as well. I mean, something about Mary Run was, of course, generational. I think it's something that we all sort of know where we were when we saw that movie start going up, which is rare for movies to start moving back up the charts. But it was just that dominance that Titanic had, and all the close calls. I know, like the Grease re-release almost beat it. I can't remember what week it was, but it was in the teens where the Titanic was still number one. The Man in the Iron Mask, Leo versus himself.
Yeah,
because really the only person who could have beat Leo in that year was himself.
Right,
didn't happen, but
right.
I mean, also, I think the summer of '89 was a big one too.
Yeah,
if we're talking about
89.
when we were little babies.
Was that when Ghost Dad hit the charts?
Ghost Dad's not a huge box office hit.
It was Batman.
But Batman '89, of course,
Last
Ghostbusters
Crusade.
2, Last Crusades. Yeah, summer of '89, depending on your age, that's a real box office summer that ignited a lot of people.
How about you? What's your origin story, your genesis story?
I mean, '89 is a big one.
Yeah.
I was 8 at that time, so I was really starting to follow the box office in the New York Daily News every Monday. Yep. The Jim Carrey year of '94 is a big box office year for me, because that was really seeing a star go from nothing to having 3 huge box office.
Is Liar Liar one of them?
No. Liar Liar was a few. Liar Liar was an early comeback vehicle for Jim Carrey.
Okay, what are the 3?
It was Ace Ventura in February. Then in July you had The Mask, and then December it's Dumb and Dumber. 3 huge hits in one year. So
wow,
that was huge.
Those numbers are still big, and you talk about it in your great show. And I'm just going to say it is really a fun show. It's a fun hang with you guys. You guys are really compelling hosts, and really what's cool about the show is you back into talking about the slate of movies, which is what we all kind of want to hear, is like what's out, what's good, what's not. You have your thoughts, but then of course there's numbers behind it.
There's numbers. There's got to be numbers. You can't just say something's good or not. You got to give it numbers.
Give it numbers. Clayton, let me ask you. I feel like this idea of the box office bomb and like the interest in it is like Schadenfreude. Is that the right way? I always
Schadenfreude?
You know that term?
Yeah. It's when you revel in the misery of others.
Reveling is true, and I've had some issues with the German language on this show.
Oh, I have to edit it. I know
you do. You have to edit every word, and that is wow. You're doing God's work. But Clayton, talk about the idea of us like reveling in misery and box office bombs.
Well, it's interesting because I do think it's like anything when you watch somebody make a mistake or fail. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who it's enjoyable to watch that happen. You know, people who watch hockey for the fights, people who go to NASCAR for the crashes. I think there's also a level of wanting to then see redemption, right? I don't think everybody just wants failure. I think they want people to be able to bounce back. When you look at somebody who is like Will Smith, who has had his problems, and there was a question, is this Bad Boys movie going to do Bafabobo after the slap? And this year, that movie was one of the leading lights of the summer that actually brought us out of a dark May, where you had Fall Guy that underperformed. You had Furiosa, which was a complete tank job. And then you have the star who was on the wane, and people were like, are people going to go see him? And they did. And I think there's a level of both sides, people wanting him to fail, but also people wanting him to succeed. Because at the end of the day, where it goes the box office goes the culture, right? Yeah. And when the box office is thriving, when people are out and social and buying popcorn, and they're buying Now and Laters, and they're buying...
Not me, man. That's a really not the one.
But
it's not.
What do you buy?
And not Snowcaps either. Obviously Reese's Pieces.
Reese's Pieces.
If I'm talking about box candy, it's definitely Reese's.
So was this from E.T.? E.T. famously put those on the map.
Oh, he certainly did, and like the marketing around that was incredible. Like they were able to, take that scene and sell like 1 billion boxes of Reese's Pieces.
Yeah,
which is still like a little inferior to peanut butter M&Ms. I don't know if
I'm an M&Ms guy at the concessions. That's my go-to.
Yeah. Since this is a food podcast, let's just go off on this for a second because I know you're a fan of the Reese's peanut butter cups.
Yeah,
and you love the seasonal ones.
Yeah.
Now, why don't theaters have a specific theatrical only Reese's peanut butter cup that you can only get at the theater that has a different distribution of the chocolate to the peanut butter filling, which is what you like, right? What is your favorite? You like the pumpkins, am I correct?
I would
or
say
the trees?
Pumpkins are number 2, the trees are number 1.
Trees are number 1.
But Easter can really be a pleasant surprise
the
if the ratios are hitting. Easter eggs.
Easter eggs,
yeah.
Great. So what would be the shape for the theater, do you think?
I mean, if we're talking about...
Popcorn bucket?
A popcorn? I mean, for a theater, I thought we were talking about actual releases.
Yeah, I mean, do you want a little? Would you eat a Reese's Pieces
that's shaped like a tiny popcorn bucket,
or that's shaped like Joker?
See, yeah, exactly, Pat. I'm thinking that more like the actual movie specific.
Or like you have Smile 2 coming out this October. Would you eat a Reese's peanut butter cup that's shaped like the evil Smilers from the Smile movies?
Or just a big smile, like it would be like banana shaped.
But it's a scary smile.
Can you imagine the opportunity for shoving more peanut butter into a smile shaped Reese's?
Yeah.
And then you could put it in your mouth and show the chocolate teeth, and you could go to your friend and be like, huh?
There's definitely like some social media elements. I feel like Reese's needs to hop on this and get into this like novelty Reese's for movie specific. Pat, back to you. Let me ask you, this season, Clayton, you laid out some really good examples of like some tanks and some successes. But for you, is there a movie that just outperformed? It doesn't have to be like it made the most money, but like outperformed more than any.
Well, I mean, It Ends With Us, the Colleen Hoover adaptation, and we're all in the book business in some way.
Yeah, so she's on the wrong side.
She's not a company person at the but we're all one big family.
We certainly are. Yeah, I mean, Colleen Hoover, I think life is long. And contracts are short.
Exactly.
So there you go. Let's come over to our side.
We could all run into each other at the kitchenette someday. But that's a movie that people and I'll pat ourselves on the back, which is something I like to do. I love patting myself on the back.
Your name is Pat after all.
Exactly. So I have to do it. But I did call that early in the summer. I mean, I think we both did. We sort of knew how big those books were, how rabid that audience was, but that was not a movie that the general, movie analyst culture was pegging to be as big as it was. I mean, that movie it's over 100 domestic.
Wow.
It's giant hit, Blake Lively. I think a lot of people don't realize how much of an audience she has. So that was a bit of a surprise. I mean, Inside Out 2, everyone knew it would be a hit, but it's so much bigger than even the first one was that it has somehow become a surprise, even though the first movie made $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to surprise when you have a bill on your previous movies,
right.
Bottom line.
But that movie somehow did that. Yeah,
that has to do with anxiety. Obviously, the breakout star, on all the pajamas, all of the blankets, all of the sheets. I mean, you're going to see anxiety. Anxiety is the new Cinderella.
Mm-hmm.
I love that anxiety can be branded. It's really good.
I mean, at this point, for the younger generation, who needs Mickey Mouse?
Right.
Just put anxiety on all the Disney merch.
Right.
There was a good amount of drama in the behind the scenes for that movie too that probably led to some success, right? Like Lively, feuding with the director, co-star. Please inform us. Is that just like a dumb media story that no one really cares about?
I actually don't think it affected the box office either way. If anything, maybe positively, just because it kept the movie's name in the news cycle a little longer.
Exactly.
But it really is just people love that book and they wanted to get that type of movie that you don't get a lot. They want to see a female-led romance movie and movies with robots and movies with dinosaurs and movies with superheroes. They all do well, but once in a while you want a movie that's not robots, not dinosaurs, not superheroes. That's just people talking on a roof. And that's what It Ends With Us was. It was just a couple of people talking on a roof, talking in a flower shop, falling in love, falling out of, whatever happens in that movie. When you talked about box office bombs and people rooting for bombs, maybe there are people out there who root for bombs, but the B.O. Boys, we always root for the box office.
I love it.
We shoot it straight. When a movie tanks, we talk about it. The Flash, we talked about that movie bomb. Anything that bombs will go into it, but we never root for a movie to bomb.
No.
And I think we hope our listeners, we're all positive. It's a positive box office community.
You want the community and the industry to succeed, but I'm going to take a negative and continue this conversation. Clayton, let me ask you, past 5 years, biggest bomb that you'd say, it doesn't have to be necessarily the amount of money lost, but it's just like the biggest bomb.
I think the one that really sort of made people scared was the Marvels. And I want to be clear about this. The Marvels did not bomb because of who that focused on, who that movie focused on, because the leads were all female. That is not the reason that movie bombed. The reason the movie bombed is because Marvel, the MCU, had been putting out very bad movies in succession. I mean, Quantumania, Ant-Man Quantumania was a movie that opened really big, but nobody liked it. And that was sort of the turning point of people moving away from superheroes as the thing. And the Marvels just happened to come out after that came out. The other thing was DC was eating dirt. Black Adam.
I said that for weeks and weeks on our show. Weeks and weeks and weeks. Everyone knows that.
Flash, as Pat mentioned. So the tide had turned on superhero movies, and the Marvels really paid the price. And that's one that I think had the MCU and Kevin Feige scrambling to change what they were doing. And they have. Less TV shows, less movies. I think, they had Deadpool and Wolverine, now it's sort of tied to the MCU more than it was because of the merger. But I think
a big success, correct?
Yeah, big success, huge success. But the thing is with superhero movies is you're not going to be able to make a success out of Guardians of the Galaxy or the Marvels, these small time comic book characters, you can't just put them in a movie and expect people to go. It's got to be marquee. Deadpool is marquee. Spider-Man is marquee. Batman is marquee. And Joker was the crown jewel. I mean, Joker has won 2 Oscars.
Yeah.
And Joker is one of the biggest stars, maybe the biggest stars in Hollywood, just Joker.
Yeah.
But
Joker and Leo, those are your two.
Those are your two.
Brother, we're talking my language. I love Leo.
Yeah.
I love my Leo.
But Folie à Deux, even with Gaga, who we love,
yeah,
the buzz isn't great on this movie. So we'll see. Can even Joker fail?
It would be a big shocker if that failed. I mean, the marketing around it has been, I think, pretty tremendous. I think the ads have been really good. And Pat, let me ask you, does marketing actually matter as much as they put it, the stock into it? And like, does a good name and a good poster and some good placement on the NBA or NFL, does that actually matter?
I mean, it's definitely tougher now because there's not the monoculture there was when we were growing up. You can't just put all the movie ads on must-see TV Thursday night,
right?
During your Caroline the City and
Single Guy.
Yeah, Single Guy.
Yeah.
And 30 million people see it. So it's spread out. So it's more scattershot. The thing that Clayton and I talk a lot about on when we look at marketing on the BO Boys is who has to eat the wings? Who has to go on Hot Ones? That's when you know a star is really.
That's such a great metric. Who's gonna eat the wings?
Well,
and who doesn't have to eat the wings?
And who doesn't like right now? Leo doesn't have to eat the wings. Leo's never eaten the wings, but Killers of Flower Moon did okay at the box office. Maybe not as well as they had wanted to do. So it starts to make you think next time Leo has a big studio release, does he have to eat the wings? And I still don't think so. I think Leo, but 1 or 2 more movies from Leo that don't hit the $100 million, then I think Sean reaches out to Leo's people and says, I think it's time for Leo
to eat
the
wings.
wings.
Even though Leo is a vegetarian, so that's going to be a tough one. Eat the wings.
It'd be cauliflower.
It'll be cauliflower.
It'll be cauliflower wings. I mean, I'll say this in defense of my man Leo, and that film was produced by Apple, and I feel like a little bit away from box office. I would say that the target for that film was to get subscription to Apple, right? And they gave them
Oscar nominations
and like the prestige and make them the next Sunday night HBO, which has been ineffective. Those shouts to Omnivore on Apple TV Plus. We had the PR people from Apple in here, and they were like, make sure to say Apple TV Plus. But if you have that subscription service, what a great show.
Well, when we're talking about the wings, and there's someone like Tom Cruise. Right. Tom Cruise was a guy coming off of Maverick.
Right.
Saved theaters. We thought there's no way Tom is ever eating these wings. Mm-hmm. He's too big, doesn't have to.
Right.
Then the Mission Impossible movie comes out.
Right. Dead Reckoning.
Dead
Part
Reckoning.
1.
Just Dead Reckoning.
Well, now they've got rid of
it's always been Dead
that.
Reckoning.
That one came and went fast.
So that movie comes out, only has 1 weekend in IMAXs. Then you got the steamroller that's Barbenheimer. Yeah. Right. He is a guy that went from never going to eat the wings to it's possible this guy's eating the wings.
Yeah, it's possible he eats the wings.
And that's how Hollywood is.
He would have to eat the wings, though, jumping out of a helicopter. Like Sean
is gonna be on like one of those like 2-person parachutes.
Okay. I thought you meant it would be like on one of those Wright brothers planes where they're each on a wing, because he would have to eat wings on a wing.
That's walking the wing.
Yeah, and he's eating the. I mean, this is Tom. I mean, he touched the Hollywood sign. The guy's jumping from space. He has a space movie where he's going to be jumping from like a satellite.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely going to do a space thing. Speaking of Toms, let's pivot to Tom Hanks.
Okay.
Isn't Tom Hanks kind of box office poison?
Oh, so Tom Hanks, obviously, he's never going to be where he was in that historic 90s, early 2000s run. Maybe the greatest box office run we've ever and will ever see at this point.
It's box office and we're big awards guys too, but it's box office and awards for him. That's what made that so insane.
But it was every year, $100 million hit. Yeah. Tom Hanks, the greatest movie star
even
run
Turner
of all
and
time.
Hooch made some money.
Even Turner and Hooch made a little bit of scratch. That 90s, 2000 run, historic, he's never hitting that again. I think he was into Wilderness for a little bit. And I think he's found himself at a certain level because all these 90s movie stars, they all had to figure it out. You know, Julia Roberts, George Clooney, Denzel has stayed pretty steady. He's an action movie every 2 years. Gladiator 2, he's got coming out. Like, he's in a good spot. Tom Hanks has had a couple of hits the last few years in a sense because he was the co-lead in Elvis, and that was a huge hit. He played Colonel Tom Parker.
Right, that accent. Right.
And whatever you think of the performance, that was a big hit. And he had A Man Called Otto, which was a adaptation of a book that did, I think, 70 million domestic. So like
sneaky.
So yeah, Hanks listen, he's not where he was, but I would say he's righted the ship. He's got that now. He's got an interesting movie coming out in October. Have you seen the trailer for Here? It's a Robert Zemeckis movie.
His boy Zemeckis.
Starring Tom Hanks and Robin Wright.
Like that pairing a lot.
Great pairing, Forrest Gump, classic pairing.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you like this, though? The movie all takes place from one camera angle from the entire movie. It's a camera that is in the corner of a living room in a house, and we see the progression of this couple from when they're young to old. And that's the movie. So I don't know.
Sounds like somebody has like been reading a little bit of Mamet. It feels like this is like somebody's trying to do the theater thing.
Well, it starts with dinosaur. I mean, the trailer shows that we see that there's dinosaurs that used to be where that house is. So I think they speed through that. I can't see it being an hour of dinosaur stuff, but they're going to show. If they want
it to be a huge box office hit, it should be mostly the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
It would be very cool if there was like definitely some like scenes where you like peek outside the house and there's like some like just like brutal violence.
Oh yeah, that would be a hit if it's like an hour and a half of dinosaurs and then we speed through Tom Hanks's family life in that house.
This is a big question, and Clayton, we've had a lot of conversation about food and film, but I want to get your takes, each of you. Your top 3 movies that kind of revolve around the world of food. I'm not saying it's a food movie, but maybe there's some food adjacent, or maybe it's an overt food movie. So Pat, you kick it off.
Do we want to do the B.O. Boys top 3 and we alternate, or do we want to do our individual top 3?
Well, I think I'm just going to get into answer the question here. I'm just going to get into.
Do you not have 3? Are you not a?
No. I have 3. I was trying to save Pat in case he didn't have 3.
Oh, I see.
But he doesn't need my saving.
A wingman will do that for you. Pat, give me a 3.
Well, I mean, I think my 3. I'm just going to go because I'm Italian American.
Yeah.
And food in gangster movies is almost as important as getting shot in the head in gangster movies. You getting shot in the head is always the most important thing in a gangster movie, but then food is second. So the Godfather movies and Goodfellas, those are my food movies. Yeah. Those are the ones where I look at everything they do in those movies. I'm like, yeah, that's my life.
I love it. So we're obviously talking about in Goodfellas, the iconic scene in the prison.
Yes, slicing with the razor, slicing the garlic. You got to get it thin.
Got to get it thin.
So it just melts
thin.
on the pan.
So it melts in the pan. Your 3, Clayton.
So my first one is sort of food adjacent, as you said, was okay.
Yeah, no, I love that it's an interpretive question.
It's The Founder, the Michael Keaton film.
Brother, I've said that on the show. You know that. You edited it. I love that.
I think
great movie.
This was Michael Keaton's sort of comeback after he did Birdman. Had an Oscar stolen out from under him by Eddie Redmayne. A black mark on the Oscars forever.
To that. The Big O.
I just want everybody to Google, if you really want to make yourself sad, I want you to Google, after Eddie Redmayne wins this Oscar, they cut to the crowd. And in the front row, you see Michael Keaton, and you see his hand, and you see him slipping his speech, his Oscar winner's speech, back into his jacket. Heartbreaking. But The Founder, I think, is an underwatched movie. It's about Ray Kroc, who was as known as the mind behind McDonald's. But if you watch this movie, you know the truth and who really built that and what he did. And what I love about that movie is it's about business, but it's also about the American dream, but how you can go from somebody who's struggling to somebody who's thriving and what that does to you. And the way that movie, I mean, you can speak on this too, because the way that movie makes you root for him and then slowly you realize what sort of person he was or became, it is so captivating, and it's a great performance by
it's terrific, and
Michael Keaton.
And design is great. It's a period piece. It has real Wolf of Wall Street energy, like low-key Wolf of Wall Street energy, not in a stylistic sense because they're very different stylistically, but like to your point, and I fully agree, you see what money does to the human condition using this iconic brand.
Yeah, great film. Number 2, I think the definitive chef movie, Burnt. You might know it as Adam Jones.
Wow.
Its original name. So this was Bradley Cooper, which it's interesting that they were going to call this movie Adam Jones because it's weird to name a movie a name that's less interesting than the actor playing the part.
Yeah.
And this was a movie that I fell in love with. Stephen Knight wrote this. He's a gentleman who's written a bunch of different movies. He also created Weakest Link.
Oh, yeah. What a great show.
He Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Early
One of those. He was
man.
a British guy. Yeah, he one of those big ones he invented. But he's also a screenwriter. And this is a movie, I'm a big Bradley Cooper fan.
Yeah, me too.
And I know it's loosely based on Anthony Bourdain's life. He also did a television show that got canceled, Kitchen Confidential, that was blatantly based on that book.
Yeah.
So he played an Anthony Bourdain type twice. 3 times might be the charm. Get him his Oscar. But that's a movie that I love unabashedly. And I know it's not critically acclaimed. It didn't do well at the box office, like 13 million, something like that. But it's a movie that I love, and I
like that. I need to rewatch it. I think there was like a romantic angle that kind of turned me off a little bit, but that was just me. But I'm not going to I'm not going to yuck on your yum.
Well, is this, because you talk to a lot of people in the food industry, obviously that's what this podcast is about. Is this a movie that people in the food industry scoff at?
I think that there's too much connection between the disastrous TV show and this show. There was it was too close, and I think some writers in food who try to dabble in film, which is I don't recommend, but they still do it. I think they sometimes connect the two as the same piece, which is unfair to Burnt because yes, there are fans, I believe, in the industry. It's come up on the show when we've talked about film. It's definitely one of those like a cult classic films at this point.
I would say, yeah. I mean, I'm part of the cult.
Cult adjacent.
I could see the B.O. Boys someday sponsoring a screening of Burnt in a local theater. You know, like when they come to us and say, "Oh, come on, we need to get people to this movie theater. B.O. Boys, could you sponsor?"
Maybe throw in some Taste.
Yeah, and Taste.
Maybe a little Taste B.O. Boys collab.
B.O. Boys and Taste collab on a screening of Burnt. Yeah,
I mean, we could do, and I know
I like that.
Maybe Bradley Cooper makes a surprise appearance. I don't know. We'll put the calls in.
I mean,
we'll do a Q&A with him afterwards. Why not?
Let's do it. Let's invite him. What's the third one?
An animated film. And you probably know which one I'm going to say, right, Matt?
Yeah.
You want to say it?
Everyone goes for the rat movie.
Oh, no, I was Food Fight.
Oh, see, I was thinking Ratatouille.
2012, Food Fight, Charlie Sheen starer.
Love it. I don't know
it's a movie about a detective. He's a dog, and he's investigating crimes that have to do with mascots for food companies. So you actually have a character voicing Charlie Tuna.
That's pretty cool. So they actually use the real IP?
They use the real IP.
Sweet.
And this is a hidden gem. I know a lot of people love Ratatouille, and Ratatouille is great. It's fine. Yeah. It's fine. But Food Fight is where it's at. So look up Food Fight.
I love it. I recall this being like a little bit buzzed about when it came out.
Well, it was a huge bomb, actually. It made, I think, a couple 100,000 at the box office. Wow. Maybe not even that.
Yeah, it was a rounding error movie.
Yeah, the budget was astronomical. I mean, there might have been some money laundering involved in it.
Yeah.
Can I turn the table on you? What's your top 3?
I like a lot. I like Tempopo. I think that's a good one. Number 1 is definitely Big Night.
Okay.
Big Night still to me is a classic food movie. And I think like I would say the Somm documentary that inspired a lot of spin-offs and some TV stuff, but the original Somm documentary about the training to get certified for like the highest level of wine certification is just, it's like truly a lightning in a bottle moment when you can capture the attention of like many people about an extremely boring topic to most people, which is like learning about wine. It's not that exciting, but to create that drama around it with some of these kooky characters, I highly recommend that. So I'd probably say Big Night, Tampopo, and Sam.
Is Charlie Tuna in it?
Charlie Tuna doesn't make a cameo in Sam, but he could.
I thought he'd be big. I thought it's one of those things where he could translate to leading man because he's a dapper gentleman.
Yeah, he's got the looks for sure.
I want to close and talk about these live events you're having because I'm going to link to the show notes. You have events in Los Angeles, Boston, and New York City, and it's B.O. Boys on the Road. Amazing. Check it out. Pat, tell me a little bit about what are we to expect at a live B.O. Boys show?
So we've got LA October 8th, New York October 22nd, Boston November 16th. So we're going to be talking about what came out that weekend. So the LA show, it'll be right after the opening weekend of Joker 2, Folly You Do. So we're going to break that down. We've got special guests. LA, people are about to lose their minds when I say who we're going to have on the show.
You're going to drive off the road. So if you're driving right now, just
pull over
into the shoulder.
Yeah. So we've got Scott Mendelson, who is the box office legend. He's the icon. He's our box office daddy, the one who really popularized analyzing the box office through his years of columns at Forbes. So he's our big special guest. Jeff Bach, Exhibitor Relations Co., another huge box office analyst. They're going to be on stage with us. And we're going to be breaking down that weekend, looking ahead to movies coming out the following weekend. So the Saturday Night Live movie comes out the next weekend. A lot of the
Apprentice.
The Apprentice, will be predicting that box office. So
the Pharrell Lego movie.
So we got a lot of big movies to talk about. But then we've also got short films, did Man on the Street things. Clayton was out there in Washington Square Park, New York.
Matt, we talked to Gen Z.
Yes.
And we talked to, we actually, I think we did talk to at least 2 Gen Alpha. They were, maybe very young Gen Z.
Bringing the kids in.
15 still Gen Z, I guess, right? But on the brink.
Mm-hmm.
And it's shocking. It's shocking.
It's shocking. And those findings, those videos, we're going to show them on the live tour. Special guests. Then New York, we've got special guests.
Nice.
We've got huge movies to break down there. We're going to be talking about Terrifier 3, which is, speaking of Halloween, October movies, that's going to be a big one. Art the Clown.
The reverse of a food movie.
Yeah.
Because people get sick.
I'll close each of you one movie you're most looking forward to this fall. Pat, you first.
This fall, Saturday night, it's a movie about the making of the first episode of Saturday Night Live, and Lorne Michaels in this. I finally get to see a movie where Lorne Michaels is basically portrayed as some kind of huge hero, and I
and let me guess, he produced the film.
I think he gave it the thumbs up.
Okay,
he said go ahead with it. Yeah, so that one is probably not going to be a huge box office hit, but as a SNL nerd, I cannot wait to see it.
What about you, Clayton?
Honora.
Yeah.
Sean Baker. Have liked everything the man has done. It's about time that he becomes an Oscar darling. And I think this thing could be a sizable hit at the theater as well.
Pat Stango, Clayton Gumbert, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
This is Taste is hosted by Eliza Abarbanel and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is produced by Shalia Harris and Pat Stango and edited by Clayton Gumbert. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates on all cool things that are happening.